Hello, as we continue to discover through 1 Samuel the truths about the question, who is leading us? We want to do a quick review. Samuel, this was a guy who was committed. He had two parents who were very committed to God and were blessed by God and said, hey, because Samuel was born to us in a situation that seemed impossible, we are giving him back to God. And Samuel grew up around a priest, and he grew up understanding what it meant to be a priest and what it meant to really follow God. At a very young age, Samuel heard God himself, heard the angel of God talking to him, and he responded to him, and he just developed this relationship. So Samuel was living out the answer to the question, who is leading us? He was following God. Over the next 2 weeks, we're going to look through Samuel's story, not necessarily how Samuel responded, but how the people around Samuel responded to this question, who is leading us? And it will help us give us just some cautions, a couple things that we want to consider when we're really asking this question. Because sometimes that question is a lot more difficult when it's practically lived out than what we want to really believe ourselves. So let's go to Samuel, 1 Samuel 8. So if you want to turn there and start getting there, we're going to get there in just a second. But I want to give you a little bit of what the story is. So since we've left off, Samuel's risen in power, not in power like in authority, but in just respect. And people have really started to listen to him. He has been given the word of God to him. He's been directing them. He's given them some incredible insight and leadership. The Ark of the Covenant has been returned. They've been having success with their arch enemy, the Philistines. They are at a successful place. That is where 1 Samuel, kind of the situation that's happened in 1 Samuel 8. And before we go on, I want to ask you a question. What do you do when you're having success? How do you make decisions when everything's going well? See, each of us can answer that question a little differently, but honestly, just reflect. Do you answer questions differently than when things are going well than when they're going maybe more challenging? Like if things are going well at your job and you're really successful, like when you get faced with a question, how do you respond? How about everything is going really good, like that new house or the new car, or maybe you're a little bit younger, like this new significant other, man, this is all going well. How do you respond? How do you make decisions? Is it different than when things are going challenging? I would just like you to think that maybe we make decisions differently, and maybe we give leadership of our lives over differently when things are going well than when things are going poorly or challenging. So let's pick it up in 1 Samuel 8. Remember, things are going well. People of God, things are going well. And they go to Samuel, like all the good that's happening, they're seeing it, and they go to Samuel and they're like, hey, things are going well, but we see some good over that other countries and other people are having, and we want that good ourselves. And we believe that this is good because we believe we see the power and we see the potential of this. So they went to Samuel and said, hey, Samuel, we want a king. We want an earthly king. We want someone to lead us. We want someone to be in charge of us. We want someone. We want the status of having a king. So Samuel did his normal thing. He went to God. He said, okay, I'll do this. I'll go to God. And he went to God, and God said, Samuel's going, man, I can't believe these guys. This is what they're asking for. They're asking for a king. And God says, you know what? I want you to make sure that they understand what it means to have a king. So he said, reply to him this way. So God was gracious. God loved him. God is always going to care for us. So he did. So we're going to read that in a little bit of what God told Samuel to say. But think about this. Have you ever made a decision that you thought, man, this is good. There's good over there, and I want to go make this decision. And you really weren't thinking about through the lenses of what's best. It's more of like what I want. Maybe it was the first time you moved out. You're like, man, I just can't wait to get independence on my own. And then all of a sudden you got on your own. You're like, man, there's bills. Who's cleaning the bathrooms, by the way? Who's getting food in the refrigerator? Who's buying the toilet paper? Like, man, who knew that we go through toilet paper so fast? Like, there's these things that we don't see because we're blinded by what the good that we think should happen. And what ends up leading our lives is what we think is good and what we think the good that we could selfishly get versus maybe a bigger truth of who's really leading our lives, who's really leading our decisions. Well, here's 1 Samuel 8, 10 through 20. This is how Samuel comes back. So Samuel passed on the Lord's warning to his people who were asking him for a king. This is how a king will reign over you, Samuel said. The king will draft your sons and assign them to his chariots and his charioteers. making them run before his chariots. Some will be generals and captains in his armies. Some will be forced to plow in the fields and harvest his crops. And some will make his weapons and chariot equipment. The king will take your daughters from you and force them to cook and bake and make perfumes for him. He will take away the best of your fields and vineyards, and olive gardens, and give them to his own officials. He will take a tenth of your grain and your grape harvest and distribute it among his officers and tenants. He will take your male and female slaves and demand the finest of your cattle and donkeys for his own use. He will demand a tenth of your flocks, and you will be his slaves. When that day comes, you will beg for relief from this king you are demanding, but then the Lord will not help you. But this is what the people did. They refused to listen to Samuel's warning. Even so, even all that happens, we still want a king. We want to be like the nations around us. Our king will judge us and lead us into battle. I wonder how we look at life and how we look at who leads our lives. How many times are we willing to give over the leadership of our lives? Like, this is a caution God was given. God was gracious. God said, hey, I'm giving you a forewarning. I'm letting you know ahead of time what you're walking into. So sometimes when things are going good, we subtly start to say, well, yeah, I will let God lead my life, but also this comfort. Also, I have to have this. Also, I have to have this nice car, or this nice vacation, or this nice thing. And we kind of start to negotiate. Especially if we look into God. Like, God promises, and he promises not in a bad way. He promises to tell us what's up ahead, depending on who we choose and what we choose to lead us. So when you're asking yourselves who is leading your life, keep these three truths in mind. God will let you choose what leads your life and who leads your life. He will not dictate that. He will let you choose. He will let me choose. God is also clear, number two, that what happens when we give leadership to our lives to someone other than him, when we give it to our selfish desires, when we give it to that thing or that person, he tells us what will happen. It's not as good, and it will come with faults. It will come with problems. It will come with issues. Number three, what you trust to lead and influence your life will direct your future. You can't just say, I'm a good person. You can't just say, hey, I'm doing well, and just think that you're doing the right thing. But God promises that he will direct our future if we give leadership to him. But he also says whatever we give leadership to him, that will lead our lives. So God's people went through a rough season after that. It was pretty rough. And you could hear more of that in 1 Samuel 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There was some rough stuff. So as we unpack this for our own application, I just want to ask you these questions. What is important to you? What is most important to you? When things go well, how do you make decisions? And finally, what influence does money, popularity, comfort, ease of life have in your decision-making and leadership of your life? Because I guarantee you, if you start unpacking those questions, you might find something that God's saying, hey, just as a heads up, if you let that lead your life, there might be some things that you have to overcome. Well, I invite you to jump into this. We're looking forward to a great rest of the series as we look through 1 Samuel and answering the question, who is leading my life?